Buenos días a todos. Good morning, everyone. First and foremost, I would like to extend a special thank you to Afore for organizing this convention and providing us the opportunity to gather. As someone who humbly serves as a risk officer at Afore, with a committed approach on Mexico's market, I'm here today with the same intention as all of you, to gain not just insight, but wisdom that will help us navigate the futures in times of great uncertainty. We are here for an enlightening presentation under the banner "The Eye of the Hurricane: How to Survive and Thrive in the Coming SEXENIO." In light of this, I will try, if I may, to unpack what this topic means for each of us. Number one, the eye of the hurricane. It serves as a metaphor, and it suggests that we maintain a calm focus amid an environment of economic, social, and political challenges, and this is a critical skill for anyone working in financial markets. Number two, how to survive and thrive. This part, for me, encapsulates perfectly the duality of our roles, in the sense that it reminds us that we should not seek to endure the challenges, but to prosper despite them. And number three, the last but not the least, the coming SEXENIO. This last part indeed highlights the upcoming 6-year period and aligning with the 6-year political cycles in Mexico. And this is a relevant time frame for making long-term decisions, especially in the context of Afore, where pension fund retirement planning strategies are formulated. Having said that, many of you may remember the impactful talk last year on the butterflies and Icarus, which actually was delivered by our distinguished guest. And I would say that his outsider's view, which I find personally compelling, will help us better understand the challenges and opportunities in Mexico. And I will add to, definitely, his talk was not just instructive, but I think inspirational and setting a high bar for our community. And I'm convinced that this time would not be the exception. So it's both a pleasure, a privilege to welcome back the same esteemed guest today. So without further ado, let's warmly welcome Harry. The stage is yours.
Kindle, thanks for the kind introduction. Good morning. I want to thank Afore and all of you for giving me the opportunity to speak today. But before I start, I want to let you know that I'm optimistic about Mexico. Now, the reason I'm telling you that is after you hear the things I'm going to say, you might think that I'm not as optimistic as I'm saying right now. But although there are many challenges ahead for us, I want you to understand that I believe this story has a happy ending. So next, I want to let you know that I'm going to say some things that are controversial. As a reminder, the views I express today are my own and don't reflect any companies that I'm on the board. They don't reflect Discovery America's. So if you want somebody to blame, it should be me. It's been a year since I last spoke here. Although some things have changed, much has stayed the same. And the bullish story that we talked about a year ago is playing out. The peso has appreciated 10%, growth is improving, and wages are increasing. Today, though, I want to share my thoughts for the coming sexenio. Before I do that, one of the things you need to know about me is I like books. I like them a lot. I have about 3,000 titles at home, and most of them are nonfiction. I read because I'm curious. I read when I don't understand things. I read when strange things are happening in the world and when we're going through great change or crisis. As you might imagine, this summer has been a busy reading season. Today, I want to share some of the things I learned from that reading. Last year, I spoke about the famous chaos theory metaphor. Does the flapping of wings of a butterfly in Brazil cause a tornado in Texas? I want to switch from tornadoes to hurricanes. And I want to talk about the hurricanes that are coming our way and how we might deal with them best. Anderson Cooper of CNN, Anderson Cooper of CNN says, anyone who says they're not afraid at the time of a hurricane is either a fool or a liar or a bit of both. I want us to be very afraid of hurricanes, but I also want us to remember Ho Chi Minh, who says, remember that the storm is a good opportunity for the pine and the cypress to show their strength and their stability. I think the coming storms are going to give Mexico the opportunity to show its strength. On the picture on the left is Hurricane Norma, who came our way last Thursday. That picture's from last Thursday when it was off the coast of Mexico, and it was a Category 4 hurricane with sustained winds of 130 miles an hour. Now, when it hit landfall in Cabo San Lucas, it downgraded to a tropical storm and did little or no damage. I think that can be an analogy for the storms that are coming our way. On the right, you will see the architecture of a normal hurricane. In the middle, see if I can get this to work. No, it doesn't work. In the middle, you'll see the eye of the hurricane, that little bright spot. In the eye of the hurricane, there's sunshine, barely any wind, barely any rainfall, and it's actually a really nice place to be. Outside the eye, however, is the eye wall. So just around the blue is the eye wall. That's where the most ferocious thunderstorms are, the strongest winds, the most damage and destructive capabilities. This too can be an analogy for our story today. We are in hurricane season. For now, Mexico is mostly in the eye of the hurricane, but whether it stays in the eye or shifts to the dangerous eye wall is mostly under the control of Mexico and its leaders and the decisions they make in the coming sexenio. So I want to share with you some of my summer reading. I'm going to go through 6 themes and related books that may offer us some insights for the coming sexenio. I'm going to do it quickly, but my hope is I'll be able to pique your interest and get some of you to read deeper in some of these books. The first of these is The Fourth Turning. For those of you who know me, you know this is my favorite book of all time. It is an incredibly profitable investment book, even though it's not an investment book, but a history and sociology book. It was written in 1997. In it, Neil Howe and his co-author wrote that we go through in history a series of repeating crises, repeating cycles or periods or turnings, and we would enter a fourth turning or crisis period in 2007. I read this book shortly after its publication in 1997. I met the author a couple of times, and I watched for the next 20 years as the story that this book told unfolded perfectly according to script. Now, the current fourth turning is called the millennial crisis in the book, and it shares similarities with past crisis periods. The last fourth turning we had featured World War II and the Great Depression. Fourth turnings are a time of great economic dislocations. Our fourth turning started with the great financial crisis of 2007. Fourth turnings also feature political divisions in society, the rise of totalitarian and populist leaders, and finally, war. What are the lessons we can take from this book? We are living in a historical cycle that is repeated many, many times. The crisis phase is here. It started in 2007, is going to end in the early 2030s. It makes the world a complicated and risky place to invest. As bleak as things may be, the fourth turning will be followed by a first turning, which will begin in the early 2030s, around the end of the coming SEXENIO. The first turning will be a time of optimism and prosperity. The next book, Anti-Fragile, is a book by Nassim Taleb. Taleb is the quintessential risk manager. Anti-Fragile is about things that do well in a crisis or fourth turning. Taleb's thesis is that in a volatile world with uncertainty, the wise strategy is to be anti-fragile, protect the downside, and in all cases, avoid fragility. Mexico's strong macroeconomic fundamentals are anti-fragile. The peso and GDP volatility are anti-fragile. In the past, Mexico's currency markets and the real economy have acted as shock absorbers for bumps in the world economy. See the chart above. The shocks that we went through are in shaded areas. GDP is in the bars, and the peso is a line chart. Mexico rolls with the punches instead of trying to suppress volatility. This is anti-fragile. Nearshoring and regionalization are also anti-fragile. If China and the US go to war, Mexico should benefit. Also, remittances from the United States are anti-fragile. The lessons we can take from anti-fragile are Mexico is more anti-fragile than most countries. Mexico has strong macro, nearshoring, and able policymakers. Anti-fragility can be lost, however, if we have our macro indicators deteriorate, we fight with our North American partners, or we have hubris and take nearshoring for granted. Last year, I talked about the really incredible series of central bankers that Mexico has been blessed with. Two of them, Agustin Carstens and Guillermo Ortiz, each wrote chapters in the two books featured here. These books are about the lessons from the 2007 and 2008 crisis. From these books, the only thing I want to talk about is the Mexican peso. Rudy Dornbush, the late Rudy Dornbush, an MIT professor and Pedro Aspey's thesis advisor, once told me in the aftermath of the tequila crisis, to have a big bust, first you need a really good boom. You may ask why I'm talking about the need to weaken the peso. The peso is down 10% since August, and we are in an election year. Many in this room probably expect peso weakness, not strength. As I mentioned many times in the last year, nearshoring will bring peso much stronger in the coming years. But at the same time, the peso will also get temporarily banged up anytime there is a global crisis in the world. There's the rub. The higher the peso goes against the dollar, the more downside and volatility as global hurricanes appear. A corollary to Dornbush, if you minimize the boom, you minimize the bust. How do we do that? First, we need Banxico independence and policy track record need to continue. We need to embrace FX volatility. We need to set up for repatriation in times of need. I'm going to direct you to one item in the fourth column that I'm happy to discuss in Q&A if anybody wants to. It says, encourage US dollar international investment by Afores, especially in liquid assets. Also, not all capital flows are equal. Inbound FDI and long-term locked-up equity portfolio investment, like private equity, are the most desirable. Short-term debt instruments are the least desirable. The fourth book, Tim Marshall's book, is about walls between countries. Walls are a very complicated topic, and the Mexico wall is even more complicated. I urge you all to read this book. The lessons we can take from the age of walls. Walls are products of fear, isolationism, and nationalism. Walls are not very effective at keeping things out. They are, however, effective symbols of hatred. Guns and drugs and people searching for a better life will always find their ways through walls or around walls or above walls. This is because those three things are inelastic goods. People will pay any price for those things. And transportation costs are not an important part of the unit economics of any of those. So only through unity and cooperation will Mexico and the US be able to solve problems related to drugs and guns and immigration. Finally, daily US-Mexico cross-border trade averages an estimated $1.8 billion. We have no choice but to find a solution for this together. In this book by Henry Marsh, who's a neurosurgeon, he tells stories of life and death and brain surgery. In brain surgery, the stakes are very high. The brain is complicated, and surgery is a delicate balance between healing and killing. All doctors must remember the Hippocratic Oath. First, do no harm. Brain surgery is a lot like presidential policy making. Both are a delicate balance between healing and harming. I bought copies of this book for Mexico's two leading presidential candidates, and I inscribed them with the following. Claudia and Sochi, running a country is much like brain surgery. Both the human body and our economy are fragile ecosystems. Any intervention has an opportunity for both healing and harming. You will be well served by the doctor's oath. Beneficence, non-maleficence, justice, and respect for the patient's autonomy. But above all, do no harm. Best wishes for the upcoming election to both of you. Please let me know if I can ever be of help. I hope you enjoy the book. So what lessons can we apply from brain surgery? The first thing is markets in the private sector work. They work a lot like the human body. They may be flawed, but they get the job done. If given the opportunity, the private sector and markets and nearshoring will do the heavy lifting for the next sexenio, but only if markets are allowed to work properly. Just like the brain and the human body, microeconomic systems are fragile. Intervention is a delicate balance between healing and harming. Mexico's current administration has not always followed this approach. I will talk in a minute about the aviation industry and the lessons we can learn there, and I'm also happy to share my thoughts about the pension industry in Mexico during Q&A. Mexico's policymakers need to remember the Hippocratic Oath. First, do no harm. Which leads me to the airline industry, the aviation industry. As a reminder, once again, these views are solely my own. They reflect no companies in Mexico that I'm on the board, and I ask you to respect that. I want to tell you about 6 events, and you can make your own conclusions from that. The first one is AICMA, our airport. In 2014, President Peña Nieto announced we're going to have a new airport in Texcoco because AICMA is overcrowded and we need to solve the congestion problems. It was going to be finished by October 2020, have 3 runways that worked, and solve all of our problems. But then fate intervened. In 2018, as one of his first official acts, AMLO canceled Texcoco. He decided to replace it with Santa Lucia and AIFA. Construction finished in 2022. There's a couple of problems with this. The first problem, Texcoco was half finished at the time of cancellation. I have a picture of what Texcoco looks like. I took it out of the presentation, but it doesn't look very nice today. And abandoning it, despite what the president told us originally, that it was going to cost us $5 billion, it actually cost us $16 billion to stop that in the middle. And where did I get that number? From the government's ASF. They did a report and found out it cost $16 billion before the president told them to not talk about that report. Problem number 2, AIFA delayed IACMA solution by 2 years. We had to live with extra congestion. Problem number 3, adoption of AIFA has been slow. The airlines have had a very tough time figuring out ways to make money there. Customers have had a tough time getting to and from the airport, and the infrastructure is lacking. The next is COVID. During COVID, the US provided over $50 billion in direct injections in the airlines in the United States. That's about $5 billion an airline. If you compare that to Mexico, who provided approximately 0 direct financial support to the airlines. This resulted in the bankruptcy of Aeromexico. The next thing is Category 2. In 2021, the FAA downgraded Mexico's government's approach to supervising the aviation industry. They brought us down from Category 1 to Category 2. For about 2.5 years, Mexican airlines lost hundreds of millions of dollars of revenues because of this. Next, Mexicana. For those of us who thought that the stake was in the vampire's heart once and for all 10 years ago. Mexicana is back. In January, the government purchased the Mexicana brand for $42 million, and the new Mexicana will be a military-operated commercial carrier. I don't even know what to say. IEFA move. In the summer, this summer, cargo airlines were forced to move to IEFA. There was a problem. The logistics and infrastructure was not there. So the customers actually didn't go with the cargo airlines. They stayed at ICMA in belly space. This cost millions and millions of dollars of losses for the cargo airlines. More recent events. October. Early October, the government announced unilaterally one day that they were going to change the deal with the airports in Mexico. This move destroyed about $5 billion of public shareholder value in a month. You can see the impact of some of these moves above. So on the top left, you have Volaris' share price through these events. On the right, you have all of the airport's price movements. I would have put Aeromexico there, but we can't because there's no price for the stock anymore. But I really want to draw your attention to the bottom. There's two charts. On the left is comparing the US and Mexico to government support to passenger airlines during COVID. On the right, same two countries, government investment in abandoned airport projects and military-operated passenger airline startups. You can see that the US and Mexico did very different choices, made very different choices with government money. I'm going to move quickly so we have time for Q&A. The Atlas of the Baby Boom Generation is a dense book. I don't recommend anyone read this book, but it tells you what happened during the baby boom era. So I could write the rest of this, I had to read that. In the charts here on Mexico, we see baby boom-like demographics and wage growth. Because of nearshoring, a burgeoning middle class and consumption changes, Mexico should parallel the US baby boom period. Winners in education and healthcare and entertainment in the US from the post-war period provide inspiration and opportunities to replicate in Mexico. Nearshoring will create a wealthier, lower middle class. Consumption habits will change and increase as wealth increases. We believe the nearshoring investment opportunity will be dominated by domestic consumption stories. We like healthcare and education the most. Here's a bonus theme. If I've depressed any of you, this book is for you. Joseph Bailey's book, Thriving in the Eye of the Hurricane, Unlocking Resilience in Turbulent Times, is a self-help book relevant to now. Read as needed. I started out today sharing that I'm optimistic about Mexico. I want to finish by confirming this. Sid Caudle, as channeled by Howard Marks, says, investment is the discipline of relative selection. If we have picked the best investments from the universe, we have done our job. Mexico is a clear relative selection choice in the age of nearshoring. Next, the great Wayne Gretzky said a good hockey player plays where the puck is, but a great hockey player plays where the puck is going to be. PE investments made today will be harvested as the next sexenio and the fourth turning end. That is where the puck will be. I also take comfort from the rallying cry of Mexico's 1910 revolution. Excuse the pronunciation. Sufragio efectivo, no reelección. I'm going to try it again because it feels good saying it. Sufragio efectivo, no reelección. And if that changes, then my views may change as well. In the song The Eye, American singer Brandy Carlisle notes, "You can dance in a hurricane, but only if you're standing in the eye." My belief is you can both dance and invest in a hurricane, but my preferred location is the eye. And that is why I believe Mexico will outperform and why I'm optimistic. Thank you.
Thank you for your presentation, Harry. Very insightful presentation. And by the way, the applause well deserved. Let's dive into some questions to explore these topics further. In your presentation, you talk about the relationship between the government and the airline industries, and as being a complicated one. So, can you share your thoughts on ways to improve this relationship, and how do you think this impacts other industries and the outlook for foreign direct investment and foreign direct portfolio investment?
So first of all, I need to repeat once again, the comments are solely my own. If anyone gets confused, 2 boards that I'm on today, I may not be on tomorrow. I also want to say I am responsible for my investment decisions. Nothing I say next will diminish my responsibility for any mistakes I've made investing in the aviation sector. Now I can answer. It's very hard to be in the aviation industry in Mexico today. We are struggling. The government is causing real harm. IEFA was a mistake of great importance. I felt good to say. I didn't know if I was going to be able to say that today. I'm going to say it one more time. IEFA was a monumental mistake. There was no real economic or business sense for that decision, and I cannot even pretend to understand what the rationale for. The industry, only thing I know is the industry didn't want it, and now that we have it, they're trying to adapt. But worse, we are being blamed in the industry and punished for its failure in ways I described earlier and in other ways that I'm not going to describe. The next thing I would say, the world's watching. Foreign portfolio investors voted with their feet in the last couple of months in the charts that I showed you. They're very concerned about the rules of the game and having clarity about the interaction between government and the private sector. FDI investors are also wondering whether this government is a reliable counterparty when it changes the rules of the game as well. So the solutions, I'm not sure what they are. I think we need course correction. We need dialogue. Over the years when I was a hedge fund manager, and I met with populist governments in places like Turkey, the AK Party, Thaksin Shinawatra in Thailand. Even Hugo Chavez invited me for dinner once to talk about the markets. They didn't share my views, but they wanted to hear what I had to think. In the last 6 years, I've gotten no invitations from this government. Maybe it's me, and I'm just not a good guest. But that dialogue needs to be taken with some people. So I don't know if we can change the course. I know on my desk, I know there's 222 days to the next election. And the books I brought are to make sure that if there's a dialogue to be had with the next presidents, I'm at least offering my services.
Thank you, Harry. Very insightful. Shifting gears a bit, you talk about Afore investing. Were you finished?
I'm finished.
Okay. You talk about the Afores investing abroad and how this benefits Mexico, and that Afores should be given more freedom to invest abroad. Can you explain your reasoning regarding this, and also your thoughts about the attractiveness of the local markets vis-à-vis the international markets?
Okay. So this is a really controversial topic. I hope no one from Amex Cap is here, but even if they are, I would say the same thing to them. You as Afores need to generate high risk-adjusted returns wherever, and you should be given absolute freedom to do so. And as I mentioned before, having Afore money offshore in dollars, in short-term instruments, is an incredible counterbalance in times of crisis. So if the peso gets expensive and money moves to dollars, and the peso gets cheap and it moves back, you guys are big money and you guys are smart money, and that's a great tool for the policymakers, and I don't understand why they're not embracing it. Now, just because I think you have the freedom to do it, I'm not sure I would be recommending to do it. There's a big asset liability mismatch going on. Your liabilities are connected with Mexico growth, inflation, and FX. For the last decade, it's been a great bet to bet against Mexico. And anyone that brought money offshore was very, very happy. I think with nearshoring, that underperformance trade in Mexico is not there, and I think that asset liability mismatch needs to be watched more carefully. I think you don't want to miss. If nearshoring plays out the way I think it is, you need to participate. The next thing I would say is public and private markets in Mexico are sick right now. If you want a working capital markets, you are the guys who are going to have to do some of the lifting to do that. And now it may not matter, but in 10 or 20 years, if the capital markets don't function, it's going to be a problem. So you have to think about whether you want that ecosystem or not. And if you do, you need to do something about it. Finally, I would say your customers are in Mexico. They are the workers of this country. I'm going to give one plug for Discovery Americas. We created 20,000 jobs, over the life of our funds, new jobs in Mexico, and they're your customers. Investing in public and private equity in Mexico is the only way we're going to get the growth of those jobs going forward. You guys need to be the capital market providers for that growth. Thank you.
Thank you, Harry. It looks like we're coming to the end of the conference. We've learned a lot today. For that, thank you very much. And thank you to Afore. Thank you all of you. And have a good day.